In this tutorial, we're going to make a form with a subform. And the idea of this is to allow us to add multiple transactions to each invoice, so we can sell lots of items in one go. Once that's completed, we're going to create a query that multiplies the quantity by the price. In this example, we have an invoice product table. The idea behind this table is to facilitate a many-to-many relationship between the invoice table and the product table. And if you want to know how to create this table, the instructions are in tutorial 5. I'm going to close my relationship view and I'm going to create a form. And I'm going to create the form using a wizard. In the first step of the wizard, I'm going to choose the source. In this case, it's the invoice table. And I'm going to take every field from my invoice table to use in my form. Because I have invoice ID, I can now go to my invoice product table and I can add in fields excluding the invoice ID. And I know that these tables are related, so I don't need to bring in the invoice ID again. Similarly, I can go to my customer table and I can add in the details of the customer. I can add in employee details and product details. Now I've added quite a lot of details, and that's just to make sure that the form is working. When I hit next, I get a preview of my form. You can see that in the preview I have a form with a subform, and that's what I should have. And in the last step, I'm going to rename my forms FRM invoice and FRM invoice product subform. And yes, I want to replace invoice. Invoice was my basic form when I had a simple relationship between the invoice table and the product table. Once it generates, you'll see that there's quite a complicated relationship between these tables. One awkward thing is that you can't really read the information in this subform. This is where the individual transaction should go. In order to fix it, I'm going to go to Design View of the form. I'm going to remove this label. So I'll right click on it and delete. And then I'm going to move my subform across. Once it's moved across, I can then increase the size of it. And I'm going to bring it near the edge of the form. Now that gives me most of the information on the screen. The good thing about this particular invoice is that I can choose employee details from a drop-down list, and when I choose the detail, I can see that the information for the employee in these two fields updates automatically. Similarly with the customer, I can choose a customer and the customer details automatically are generated. Similarly, when I choose a machine, the machine name, the color, the category, and various other pieces of information appear. I can introduce a number of additional purchases, so each one will have a quantity. And they're all attached to the same invoice. So it allows me to sell multiple things at one time. Now I'd also want to tidy up the form, but at the moment I'm going to leave it as it is, because what I want to do is I want to calculate a subtotal. To create a subtotal, I'm going to go to Create and then Query Design. For my subtotal, I'm going to need the invoice product information that has the quantity, and I'm going to need the product information that has the price. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add all of the invoice product information to my query. I'm double-clicking on each field. Now I'm going to the product table and I'm going to add in the selling price. In the first blank row, I'm going to add in a new value, and this is going to be my subtotal. So I'm going to type in subtotal and then a colon, and this is defining what subtotal is. So my subtotal is going to be the quantity and I'm putting quantity in square brackets because it's a field name, multiplied by, which is the asterisk, selling price. In order for this to work, I have to make sure that I type in the field name exactly as it appears in the table. I'm now going to view my query in datasheet view just to see what it does. And I find that I have selling price of £300 and a quantity of 5 with a subtotal of £1,500. You'll notice that it's already formatted. If it's not formatted, then what I can do is I can select my subtotal and I can change the format. So I'm just going to force it to be currency. I'm going to save my query, and it's query subtotal. And now I'm going to close it. I'm now going to create my form, again using the wizard, and I'm going to start with my invoice table. Having selected my invoice table, I'm now going to go to my query subtotal, and I'm going to add in all the information apart from the invoice ID. If I go to my customer table, I can add in everything apart from customer ID. In this case, I just want the surname and the forename. And similarly with the employee, I add in the surname and the forename. When I choose next, I can see that there's a form with a subform. Next again, datasheet. And I'm going to rename it so that I have form invoice. And form, or FRM, subtotal subform. Now form invoice is a name that I've already used. Form subtotal subform hasn't been used, so it should give me an error message asking if I want to replace the form, which I do. My form has been created, but it's not very tidy, so I'm going to make a few changes to the design. I'm going to open it in design view. I've made a few changes to the layout of my form, but I haven't actually changed any fields. I've changed a few labels and I've repositioned things. If I view it in datasheet view, or the normal form view in this case, it's a little bit easier for me to manage. I'm going to create a new invoice, and I'm going to choose my customer and my employee. Then I'm going to choose the products that I want to buy, along with a quantity. Every time I choose a machine, the subtotal automatically updates. At the moment, my form doesn't calculate a grand total. I'm going to do that using a series of update queries, and that'll be in the next tutorial. In this tutorial, we've created a form with a subform, and we've created a calculation for subtotal.